The idea to make a movie called Halloween came to me as a result of a movie called Assault on Precinct 13, which was made by a brilliant man named John Carpenter. I distributed that movie and took it to London, where it received the first prize in the London Film Festival. So I knew I had to make it a movie with John, and I racked my brain. And one night on an airplane coming back from Italy, I thought about making a horror film because with the market of the movie, and I wanted to make it in one night because we could control the budget. And boom, Halloween popped into my head. I thought that Halloween had been done before. It turned out it never had been, and nor had the name ever been used in a movie before. That's quite amazing. And then I thought, yeah, let's terrorize some kids on how babysitters. Everybody's been a babysitter or had a babysitter or was a baby, you know. So I thought that would be a good come down. So the point I make here is that the two ideas were synonymous. They really came at the same time. When I got off the plane, I ran home. I told my wife what I thought about it, and she said, "Oh, that's exciting. Call John Carpenter right now." It was late. It was about 9 o'clock in the evening. I got John on the phone. I described what I wanted to do. He got it instantly. He got very excited. I said, "Let's meet the next morning. Let's talk about this." We met the next morning, and as he said, I don't remember this, but he said, over a tuna fish sandwich, we discussed how to make the movie. And I said, I wanted this to be Hitchcockian. I wanted it to be more like, I used the examples of Exorcist and Psycho, because each of those films showed very little. It was all imagination. It was called theater of the mind, because when I was a kid, we had radio. We didn't even have television. He understood it perfectly. John just agreed to everything we talked about. He was so excited. Although in those days, I think it would have been a movie about this microphone. You know, he was the hungry young filmmaker. And then he said, "I want my name above the title." And I thought that was so audacious. You know, he made one movie, and now he wanted to live with it. I said, "Can you do this movie for $300,000? He said, "Yeah, I can do that." I said, "Well, you can have your name above the title. You can have anything you want." That's how it all started.
And so then John roped in some of his cohorts, Dean, Nick, Tommy, talk about when, we have more coming. Talk about when John and Deborah first approached you guys with this idea. Did they already have a script written, or you guys brought it even before that point?
Well, I had done probably about a dozen pardon me, my bowl backed up.
Is there any water?
So I had done about a dozen low-budget drive-in theater movies, and there's been a script supervisor on the show. Her name was Deborah Hill, and I worked with her on about 4 different movies. She always impressed me because not only was she taking notes and stuff, the script supervisor, but every now and then she'd come up and say, "You know, it seems to me like," and some story point or whatever. So she was obviously more interested in film than just a job. And then one day I got a phone call from Deborah, and she said, "You know, there's this guy, and we're going to make this movie, and his name is John Carpenter. I think you guys would make a good team. Why don't you meet him?" And so I did. And apparently they thought it was okay to hire me. So I worked on the movie.
Hello, anybody here? Well, as some of you probably already know, John and I go back to childhood together. Same grade school, played in the orchestra, the whole deal, and we got very close as teenagers.
Did you go trick-or-treating?
No.
No.
Not with John.
Did you babysit? No.
Yeah.
You did?
Anyway, we played music together, and that was really the basis of our friendship. Was making music and loving the Beatles and stuff like that. And then John, who knew what he wanted to do, film directing since '89. I didn't know what a film director was, or that such a thing existed. Is there any other? Bowling Green? Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Aw.
Anyway, I helped him. I took him up to the college library. They had this big blue book of colleges. He focused on New York University, Florida, the cinema school at the University of Florida, and USC. And USC won out, and he headed off. And then after I graduated from art school in Ohio, I headed out west to join up with him. And so Halloween was his third feature. The first one was kind of a student film that got out of control. The second one was a legitimate feature with a schedule and a budget, 35 millimeter. We really thought we were grown-ups at that point. And Irwin was involved completely in Assault and thought of the title. Irwin was a good man with the title, as you now know. And so when Halloween came along, John loved working with friends, and so he turned to me and asked me if I could design a movie, art direct, design a movie. And I said, oh, yeah, sure. Well, the less you know, the more confident you can be in your answer. And so I just shrugged my shoulders and said, yeah, and kind of learned on the job. But that's how I got involved.
Were you a childhood friend or you met at
yeah.
USC? What was, then you came on board.
If we're going in chronological
Yeah.
order, I'm not sure. Well, maybe I'm the
Yeah,
next
you're
in terms
next.
of that. But my job on the show was limited to, as you know, the running around in a rubber mask. So,
How do you know him?
but okay, yeah, that's what I'm going to get to.
Oh, okay.
But like Tommy, I knew John before his career took off, but not as far back as him. Grew up in Los Angeles and met him when we were all at the University of Southern California. We did shorts together, had a lot of fun. We sang together, had vanity rock and roll groups. That was really our first love, let's face it. And but when John started to do his movies, I would go back. And the first one, Dark Star, which was started off as a short at film school. I worked in the background of that movie. Then when he made it into a feature, I went and helped him and Dan O'Bannon work on that. And then went off, to try to do my own movies.
I want to interject that Nick, those who know Dark Star, remember the beach ball alien creature. Nick played the feet of the beach ball. And to be honest with you, I think that John looked upon him as kind of his lucky charm, and so naturally turned to him to play the immortal part of the shape in Halloween.
And just jumping to that came about because they were really shooting this. Part of where they were shooting was in Hollywood, which was a couple miles or less from where I live. And I said, you know what? It's going to be so convenient for me to be on this set, watch you shoot, watch the crew. I want to be a director. Let me hang around. And he said, okay, put the mask on and you'll be here the whole time. So some things are done, with all kinds of creative reasons in mind. Some things are just done out of luck, and that's why I'm here 40 years later.
Well, he was jack of all trades. 3-man art crew, and we all did everything.
So that's how I got the part, which is how you get a lot of parts in Hollywood, is knowing the right people. And it's kind of funny, it was the smallest part I ever had, and it's the only part I remembered for. But it was cool, it was a lot of fun. Nancy Tice was one of my good friends as well.
Nancy Loomis to these folks.
Yeah, Nancy Loomis to y'all. So I was just delighted to be in the film with all my friends. Thanks all. Thank y'all for coming.
You were obviously not the cameraman. How much were you just involved on the playback, or did you get to kind of walk through them with them? Or?
No, I was just involved in that one scene where my mask was pulled off. when I auditioned, I had 2 auditions for that role. First one I auditioned for Tommy. Then I had a callback, and I didn't do any reading. They just asked me to make a scary face. And I think the next day they said, you have to roll for Halloween. We filmed it on a Friday. I got there in the morning, and we waited till dark to start shooting it. They didn't ask me to, once it got dark and started filming, put on the clown suit, the mask. I just remember doing a bunch of takes. I didn't have to do a scary face, anything like that. They just told me to just have a blank stare and look, just straight ahead. On the photos I see, it looks like I'm looking at the camera, but I do not remember looking straight at the camera. I just remember just looking straight ahead. Did a bunch of takes. That plastic mask with the rubber band was very painful. Coming off, my hair was a lot longer. And we did numerous takes. 45 minutes later, we got the shot, and that was it.
Do you remember, like, around what time were you aware that you were like, oh shit, I played Michael Myers? Like, that's what it was. Like, was it one of the sequels coming out? Did you kind of aware?
It was kind of a couple of years later when word of mouth. I mean, it just over time, friends of mine saw the movie, their parents loved it, and it just kind of escalated from there. And whereas just everybody, and it wasn't like I didn't really share that. It just happened. People just talked. Everyone from my school or my little league baseball team or soccer they kind of knew. And so after that, after the movie came out a year later, and every Halloween after that, it was like, hey, we saw you in that movie. And it just kind of on and off stayed that way 40 years later.
Did you get to see the movie when you were a kid?
Yeah, we went to go see it,
You went
but
to the casting crew
we
screening?
actually left, I don't know, 2/3 into it because my sister got really scared. So my dad's like, all right. We took off. Cable, and back then when it was called, if anyone remembers, On TV. And that's when I finally saw the whole thing and saw the final scene where Michael Myers just didn't die. And then 81, the sequel finally came out, and it went from there.
No.
Was that the last day of shooting? I heard rumors that this scene was the last day of shooting.
The cable company, Panavision, put it on and walk around all the ways and the parking lot in order to learn how to use it. So it was a unique, sort of groundbreaking moment in the history of film.
Yeah, it
What
was.
I remember most when I came out one night, what was late in the afternoon, was watching, I don't know which of you guys was doing it, but with a big basket of phony leaves, throwing them in front of the lens to make it look like fall. And for the most part, they made the movie look like fall. It really looked like a Midwestern, or in this case, Haddonfield, fall. There's only one glitch in the movie, and I don't know how many people know about it. You guys probably know about it. There was one palm tree.
Hell no.
But you know, I never noticed it for years till somebody pointed it out to me. I mean, this crew, this happy band of brigands, the starving bunch of would-be filmmakers who slept on the floor all night. They never left the set. I don't even know if we paid them any, I don't know if we give them any food. I don't remember that.
No.
But,
Bad McDonald's.
that's right. There was a lot of McDonald's, I will say that. But I just want to say something about that because I've never experienced it in my life after that time. This was a perfect confluence of events where nothing went wrong, at least that I know about. Everything seemed to work perfectly. The harmony and the love that they all seemed to have for the project and for each other was evident all the time. I would go out there as the titular producer. Deborah Hill, by the way, we have to mention Deborah Hill. Deborah Hill, when John wanted to make this movie with me, he said, I want Deborah Hill to produce. He was living with Deborah Hill. I said, if that's what you want, hire Deborah Hill. I didn't know anything about her. I didn't care. But Deborah turned out to be a unique talent in her own way and resourceful and hard worker. So when you went out there and you saw Deborah and PJ and all these people having a great time, even though they were working, and I'm sure that PJ will tell you about that, even though they were working so hard. And then my son was in the movie, and he would come home with wonderful tales about everything. So I would go out there, after about the fourth or fifth night that I went, because I hate nights, I should have. I couldn't believe it. It was all so beautiful. Everything was working so perfectly, and that continued through the shoot, through the campaign to develop the movie, the selling of the movie, the fact that the critics found the movie, and here we are 40 years later.
This was, I was present during this, but it may be a little uncomfortable. It was John's, most famous movie, and for a lot of people. He was invited to the USC Film School to screen it for the students because it was, like one of theirs had made a regular feature. So we ran the movie, and then we sat on the stage, and I think you were there, right, Tom?
I don't remember this.
Oh, you didn't remember?
That doesn't mean I wasn't there.
But I saw him there, but, maybe I was imagining. Anyway, it was myself, and Deborah, and John, and I thought Tommy, and somebody else. And we got up on the stage, and they asked questions, these students. So what was it like making your first movie? Oh, that scene with the thing, and how did you do that, and so forth. All of the usual student film questions, because they were curious about this movie that, a film student had made. And one of the guys raised his hand and said, but why did you make this movie? Why would you make a movie like this? And we looked at each other and thought, well, we made a movie, but that was an idea. But I think it was Deborah who said, well, what we wanted to do was put an effort into it, to work as a cohesive unit behind a single idea, so that we were all working to make a film as if it would become a classic. And this guy said, wait a second. You think this piece of crap will be a classic? You people are deluding yourselves. He got up and left. I wonder where he is now.
I just want to say a word about leaves and fans and trying to make Los Angeles in the springtime look like the Midwest in the fall. We all accepted the fact that we were not going to get what it really looks like there, which is this magnificent color display on the trees and stuff. We let go of that right quick. But we did figure that we can do brown leaves and gloom and moodiness and set the tone that is appropriate for a scary movie. Live oak trees don't grow in the Midwest, but South Pasadena provided us with a lot of live oak trees, as did Orange Grove Avenue in Hollywood. That set a mood, but still, how are you gonna do autumn, Halloween? There wasn't a leaf inside. Like, certainly not a brown leaf or a yellow leaf. So we had to go down to this decorator place where, they sell pussy willow buds and things that decorators use to jazz up a house, per se, or whatever. And they did, in the corner, they had these stalks of brown leaves, autumn leaves. And they were not cheap. So we bought as many sticks of those as we could afford, broke off the leaves, and put them in garbage bags. It amounted to about 2 or maybe 3 garbage bags full. And you better believe believe those things, after every take, we break them up, put them in those bags again for the next take because they were like gold.
They were expensive, you idiot.
Yeah. So the rest, as Irwin was pointing out, was shooting around palm trees, mostly other kind of exotic Southern California things that did not look like the Midwest. And we were pretty successful with a couple of pickups. I kept thinking maybe we could put these shrouds that look like tree trunks, you know, made up of paper and mache or something. And on the $600,000 version of the movie, we would have done that, but it wasn't meant to be. But pumpkins, hell no, in Los Angeles in the spring, we had to find gourds that were green that looked vaguely like pumpkins and spray paint them orange. So that was kind of our adventure in the art department.
I want to know about the real sex scene because she's sitting
Oh my
right
God.
here. We have the two people.
Yeah, tell us about that. There's two boyfriends here, actually. BJ, what'd you say?
This guy is
I don't know, it was completely natural and fun, and I helped to choose Bob because he asked me to,
Because I'm curious about that.
yeah, he asked, well, after I auditioned, which, you know, I've told this many times before, that, you know, you never get to audition with a director, but I did, and he offered me the job on the spot, which is also totally unusual.
Totally.
Totally. And he said, would you mind staying afterwards? I got 3 guys out there and you can help me pick Bob. And I went, sure. So we chose Bob, John Michael Graham, and I don't know, we just had an instant connection. And I haven't seen him in, what, like 10 years? And it's just, you know, that was the way it was on the set. I met Jamie Lee, we were instant friends, same with Nancy, and we just had this nice chemistry and connection. But of course, everybody's awkward, you know, doing a scene like that. Definitely, we were not totally naked. We had clothes on, partially, except for me. But I thought we were enthusiastic and robust, and needed a cigarette afterwards. That's how good it was.
I believe that John thought we were a little too enthusiastic at first. And
I
actually
remember that.
said, well, how do you say this?
Tone it down.
Tone it down, not enough thrust. Because it was being filmed from the back, you know, and I guess I was trying to be very realistic. And maybe not that realistic, so maybe just a little writhing and, yeah.
We had a lot of sheet motion.
Well, you know what was good was, I thought they were very thoughtful about
Yes.
how comfortable we were.
Oh, overly.
And
It was
waited-
only Dean and Deborah and John in the room, and they had the sound guy out.
Waited till my last day on set.
Oh, I didn't
so
know
we
that.
could do
Was
it.
your last day?
So we had time to build some sort of rapport and
Yeah.
feel more comfortable with each
Yeah.
other, so, yeah.
No, it was, you know, those things, like I said, are very awkward, but definitely had a good time. And, you know, you missed the whole part when he comes back up with the
Yeah.
sheet over his head. You
This
were,
is the good part.
You were hung up at the time.
My glasses, I've said this to people today because I have my glasses with me that I wore on the film, and I always say that my glasses work longer than I did. My glasses worked like 2 extra days. So,
What about those glasses? You didn't, I don't remember you having them at the audition. Or did you?
You provide your own stuff, you have to get a
yeah, where is that?
add it onto your base.
Where is that extra one? Yeah. Actually, the shirt was mine, and the glasses were mine.
So you brought them as part of your character. You thought
Close
that
readers
that
too,
was.
yeah. So,
And whose idea was it to put them on the sheet?
They think it was actually,
well, you know,
In the script.
yeah, because they
I think
told
it
me
was-
when
Oh,
I've
to
told this
bring
story
them.
too, that John wanted me to wear black Ray-Bans back,
I didn't know.
Wayfarers, and I thought they were so uncool in 1978, so had these terrible glasses, and I was like, can I wear my own glasses? You know, thought I was really cool or something, and he said, yeah, okay. So he said, but if you do, they've got to stay with us till we're finished shooting, so that's what happened.
And they're still with him today.
That's right. And I really worked on it, and I did it, and turns out I got the part, and being a little young and naive, when I was home, and I ran up to my dad, and I said, I got this part, and, you know, I'm really, really excited, and he said, oh, what a coincidence, you know, I'm the producer, so it was my first learning experience of really, you know, nepotism, but we had, like everyone was saying, it was an amazing time, and I remember the spray painting of the gourd, and I remember that damn pumpkin or gourd took about 5 or 6 hours to finally break. We cut it with a chainsaw. We almost put a stick of dynamite in that thing, and no matter how many times I threw him down as hard as I could, and I did, but it didn't break. But that was the frustrating part. But we had the best time. I remember we really had a wonderful, wonderful time, and I did wear my same clothes too, my own clothes. But I gotta say, for me, it was kind of normal because throughout my childhood, my dad, the greatest joy he ever got was scaring the crap out of people. So, you know, I've never met anybody that would stay, you know, in a cupboard or a closet for 45 minutes to an hour and a half just to make sure, just in the hope somebody would open it up. and I gotta tell you, I've inherited that. And, you know, whenever my friends would come over, I had them sign a waiver. I had them, you know, he would put the movie on for us. This was after the movie was out, and then he would lurk outside with the knife and everything. And he was always fun, but always loved a good scare, and I inherited that. So here we are, 40 years later, still scaring. So. Yeah.
I recall that I took a friend of mine to, we took a friend of ours to see it, the premiere, and the next day his mother called my mother because he was scared he saw a hand in the window. So you know, it was very scary to a lot of people early on. I've heard this before. Some young lady told me that the first time she saw the movie, she had to get her sister, pick up her sister so they could drive the boyfriend home, because she did not want to drive from the boyfriend's house back to her house alone. You know, and the idea of people looking in their cars, I've heard that too. So this had a very powerful effect. I like the story. I like the way it has a classic story structure. It starts out with an overture, you know, a visual and musical overture, and the opening credits remind me like of a throwback to a Saul Bass. Everything you need to know is in that first 2.5 minutes. The music, the visuals, nice two opening prologues that set up the basic story, which basically goes from the middle of things all the way to the end, connected in a 24-hour period, you know, so it's classic Aristotelian. Very few locations, very few characters, not too much told simply and told well. The less is more. I like seeing movies made with single camera because, you know, now you have to focus on the actors. The extra cameras are like, you know, well, now we can show more visuals and splash, and it's bad Jackson Pollock. It's just too much video everywhere. I'd rather see a simple story told simply with characters that I like, that I get to know, that I feel connected to, moving on from one scene to the other logically, and ending with a conclusion that twists everything around, but was obviously going to happen anyway. Okay.
Nice.
I ended up with a hernia, and I had to have it repaired, and I had to go to the hospital. How much of the story do you want?
How much you got?
So it was a unique tool, and
And it replaced like having to lay, you know, track and do it
oh
all
yeah,
on the,
no, the grips.
yeah, that wouldn't have been.
loved it because they didn't have to do a lot of work.
And
So
it saved time.
a unique tool used for the first time extensively. And at the time, because it was expensive, very often I would go to a film afterwards and say, so here's the idea, we'd like to use the Steadicam for the sequence in the hospital and whatever and stuff. And the production manager would say, Steadicam, he'd look through the budget, Steadicam, I don't see it listed here. So obviously we can't afford it. And I said, well, you should list it. Oh, no, why do you need that? We have grips. Well, now every budget includes carrying a Steadicam for most of the show or all of the show. It's become such an important tool. So, you know, Halloween was one of those that was groundbreaking in many ways, technically, story-wise, visually, acting. You know, I remember John talking to somebody, might have been you, and saying, you know, I loved His Girl Friday with who was it? Cary Grant.
Russell.
Dialogue, fast, overlap. Don't wait till the other person stops talking. Start talking immediately, just like in real life. You know?
Yeah, I remember that.
As a result, you know, he would say to the girls, faster or overlap or talking, you know, and PJ would have to make up something while somebody else was saying something, you know, significant. So it stylistically, you know, it was very sort of groundbreaking, visually, performance-wise, everything. And it's kind of underestimated, I think, because it was ahead of its time compared to, you know, I mean, it really started the horror trend. So it was fun to be a part of.
And it makes everything look so natural. That was the thing that I thought when I first saw it. I went, wow, that really looks like you're just following us. Well, and it was as if Michael Myers, which he was, looking at us from his car.
You know,
So it gave that effect as well. And I just really was impressed by it. As I remember just sort of jumping up and down. I mean, I knew nothing about cameras and anything, but that was just very exciting to me, the Steadicam.
Well, Dean just said something that just jogged my memory because he says it was groundbreaking. And jumping ahead, when we opened the film, and it's kind of legendary now, but we opened the film in one theater in Kansas City, and that was by design because I wasn't sure what the critics would give us being the movie, and I thought if we opened in Kansas City and the movie didn't do well, I could bury the reviews and we'd start another idea, another approach. Well, as it turned out, we didn't need much of a campaign because the word of mouth was instantaneous. As a matter of fact, you might enjoy hearing this. One of the fellows that came up today to have something signed said, I was in the audience in Kansas City at that first showing, and he had a photograph of the staircase. And he said, I was there, and I went home, and I phoned everybody I knew, and the next day in school, I told everybody. It was like, you just proved what I always tell people, you know. But further along, so we were very careful about how we marketed the movie, how they say marketing, those they distributed the movies, because I didn't want to wave our hands and say, look at us, what a great movie we have. My thought was, let's back in and let the critics discover the movie. And that's exactly what happened. Siskel and Ebert, who saw it in Chicago before anybody ever saw it, decided to appropriate it for themselves, and they went nuts and told John Yablans is the new Hitchcock, and the movie's brilliant and it's incredible. And then Andrew Saris of the Village Voice, these were all, you know, avant-garde kind of critics. And I'll never forget what they said, and I'll end with that. He doesn't know what he has, meaning me. We know that it's a great movie. So that's exactly what I want to do. They sold it back to us.
Nick, do you?
See, I believe the first actual shot of the movie was Laurie crossing and then meeting with Tommy. That's the first shot on the first day.
No, the first time he was shot.
And then we walked over to the Myers house. okay? So we would see the shots over the shoulder of Nick first, and then maybe we'd see the other shot over the shoulder as I walk on, and Jamie keeps on walking and starts singing. So the first shots of Nick were at the house on the first day where I meet up with Lauren. And then we went over to the school. And that's where we did the school shot, and that's where Mickey runs into Nick. And that was my first day. So that's what we did.
See, I don't know. Well, one of the first shots was me walking across the street at night, because it was the first time I remember asking John, okay, I'm going to start doing this character, and I'm walking, and what do you want out of this? He didn't tell me anything, and now suddenly I'm about to shoot something, and I'm going to be portraying this character, and so he looked at me kind of funny when I asked him that, and he said, just walk across the street, stop bothering me.
You got a mask on.
Got a mask on, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. So, which did, it did work into the friendships the bond that we had, so you could just tell somebody, just shut up and do the work. And it was about, obviously, now, since then, John has mentioned, I know, in other interviews that he liked the way I walked, and so maybe there was just some truth to that he saw the way I walked, didn't want anything other than whatever that natural stride was.
Well, you came up with the head tilt, looking at
Yeah.
at
That
Bob.
you? Was you,
Right?
was the head tilt your idea?
No, that was John? Oh, yours.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. I love the head tilt.
Nick won't say it, but he grew up in a household. His dad was a very famous choreographer and dancer, and although Nick does it unconsciously, he has a great, smooth, grooved walk.
The castle walk.
The castle.
Yes, he was.
Well, somebody just mentioned the head tilt. John, can you talk about looking at that happen? We've seen it a zillion times from far away, but you had to look dead him in the eye and see that freaky. Do you remember when you filmed that? Did it seem kind of odd? Or?
Well, what I remember is supposedly they could only keep me hanging on the wall for 2 minutes, or the harness would crush my pelvis, which gave me a real sense of confidence. So I was probably hoping that he would yell "cut," is what I was probably. But I don't really, and you never, of course, you don't think that's going to be iconic, that moment in time. So I don't really remember that much. I don't remember it being a big deal. Obviously it was, but I don't remember that. I know that was terrifying. The only part of filming that was terrifying, opening that door and having you rush out. I mean, that really felt, I didn't have to perform there. That was just like, what the hell's going on here? So yeah, but yeah.
I had a hand in the head tilt. I was in the cutting room as well, so I was seeing these things as an editor might see them, and it just crossed my mind that we could add an extra layer to the shape if it isn't just that he goes and kills somebody, but he admires his own work. Now that's really chilling. That's horrifying. And it was great fun in the, and I asked John to just stay on him a long time. Didn't know I was crushing him, but just stay with him a while before you cut. And we sat in the cutting room afterwards watching that scene, just debating about just how long can we hold this? How far can you take it and it still be horrifying and not annoying, just horrifying that this guy's standing there checking it out.
I've always wondered.
I think Nick kind of, I think you were encouraged by one of us to just,
Admire your work.
Admire your work.
You chose the tilt.
Yeah, the way I remember it is I was just doing the scene and John was saying, now tilt your head to the right, tilt your head to the left. I didn't particularly know what he was doing, frankly. So the conversation with Tommy and John probably happened before that, just to kind of and then set the mood for for the scene itself. So, yeah, again, it's one of these things, you know, for someone that does this kind of work, at least for me, you know, you're in a mask and you're not, you're kind of one enclosed and not really, you are part of the scene, obviously, but you're puppeteered by the director, you know, in a sense. He can have a better sense of how you're coming off.
I just always wondered about the knife. How was that chosen? Like, that knife's so small, there's no human way that knife could hold a person up. The knife's that big, and so am I. But I mean, I wonder, did you just go, okay, then we're just gonna pretend that that's gonna work in life, or?
Well, there's so many circumstances in the movies, not just our movies, but all movies, where that's not real, that couldn't possibly happen. You don't care in the moment. Those are the questions that Alfred Hitchcock called refrigerator questions. You're watching a movie, you dig in, you're all absorbed, and then the movie's over. You go home, and you rummage around in the refrigerator for a snack, and you go, wait a minute. But it's too late. At that point, you already bought your ticket, so think anything you like.
Did they have driver's education and sanitariums?
So you're talking about credibility in movies. I remember the first time I saw the movie, we screened a movie for a large audience in New York City. It must have been 1,000 people. And I was concerned because, actually it was in Brentwood I talked about. It was in Westwood. We filmed it for 1,000 people, and many of them college students, and it was a big risk because we wanted to try it out in front of a real serious audience of young people. And this was the worst test you could give it because these were all sophisticated UCLA kids, graduates, and they're pretty tough critics. And halfway through the movie, they started to laugh and snicker, and I started to slump in my chair because I thought, oh my God, what have we got here? And as we went along, they started to laugh, scream, and as the movie reached its fever pitch, and Laurie Strode drops the knife for the 14th time, somebody in the rear yelled out, "You dumb bitch, you deserve to die." But what I found out was, and this happened time and again, that laughter, that tittering, that was a relief of tension. They were so involved, they were totally, the fourth wall had been breached. They were in that movie. They were experiencing that terror. So I learned after a while to disregard that and you'll see that today in certain audiences, they laugh at with release. But the point I was starting to make is that credibility is what you make it. You make a movie, you create an illusion. And if you create that illusion properly, you can get away with just about anything.
To make a long story short, for people who didn't know, I was in a house in Northern California about 34 years ago. Someone cut the phone cords, and a guy was running around outside the house with a knife, and I freaked out. And the only thought that went through my mind was, well, what would Jamie Lee Curtis do? Our dog Duchess had bit up these knitting needles, and I knew my aunt had thrown them away, so I grabbed them out of the trash. And I saw the guy with the knife on one side of the house. I ran out the door, went running down to the neighbor, screaming my brains out like Jamie Lee Curtis did. And banging on the door like crazy, let me in, let me in. And the neighbors are like, what do you got in your hand? I said, they're just knitting needles. And they said, not with those knitting needles, we're not going to let you in our house. And like I told Jamie, I said, to make a long story short, I'm here today because of the way how she portrayed Laurie Strode. I'm a victor today instead of a victim. And what Jamie Lee Curtis did afterward was absolutely amazing. She came off the stage. She embraced me as I bawled my brains out because I knew I was in the arms of somebody who understood post-traumatic stress, who understood trauma, And if you guys are watching any of the interviews lately, that's all Jamie Lee Curtis is talking about is trauma. This is a movie. The first one set up a person who was traumatized, and I guess the new one's going to tell us what to do to fight against it. And it was kind of funny because after we got done hugging, all of a sudden I realized I'm standing next to Jamie Lee Curtis. Can I have your picture? And then she looked at me, she goes, I think they got a couple. I didn't realize all the cameras that were pointed on us. And you guys know, if you guys are looking on it, I mean, it went to England, it went to Washington Post, New York Post, New York Times, LA, I mean, everywhere. And I couldn't leave Hall H for 2.5 hours because I was approached by countless men who had been in situations where they had been victimized, where they had been raped, where they had been molested. The reason I'm talking about it right now is to the cast. Thank God you guys made this movie, because I'm alive. And I know everyone makes movies and they're fun. And we don't know how the art that you guys put out there is. I'm sorry, I didn't follow the Linda and Bob handbook because there's no way I would have made it. Thank God you guys made the movie, because that was the only thought that went through my head at the time that saved my life. And then, I don't know if you guys saw The View last Monday. Over 200,000 hits when they re-showed her and I at Comic-Con. So that kind of tells you a little bit of what this new movie could do. But I really wanted to do what I did with Jamie, which was thank you guys so much for making this movie. From the bottom of my heart. And you need to know, I got stopped by a couple hundred people yesterday. No one today, which was interesting. But I got stopped by a couple hundred people yesterday, mostly men, again, who were telling me of how they had been in situations where they had been molested, or they had been threatened. Because men don't talk about it, because they don't want to be seen as weak. They don't want to be seen as emotional. And I'm hearing what Jamie Lee Curtis is saying is to open up and talk. So I didn't want to get really I guess I did get super serious, but thank you. Thank you to the entire cast up there. I can't wait to see what this next movie is going to do, because you know what, it just affected me. I met somebody who said that Andy Kubrick, is that the right name, from The Fog, how that character helped him through his parents' divorce. I don't know, guys. Just God bless you and thank you for making these films. Thank you. We need a sheet.
Oh, yeah.
There it is.
Oh, these.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Start out just got this giant city, and you go, oh, where can we go? One of the associate producers, a woman named Cool Lusby, and I drove around, and she took me to the orphanage where she grew up, and it was down south of South Pasadena, and on our way back, we started through Pasadena, and everywhere I'm looking, I'm like, geez, this is pretty good. Let's drive around some more. And basically, South Pasadena was our savior. We shot an awful lot of the movie there. Would have shot the street shots there, the houses. We had those locations locked down, but I won't go through the long story, but I blew that location at being an amateur. And Deborah rescued us by finding the places on Orange Grove Boulevard in Hollywood. But South Pasadena, we stumbled on it fairly quickly and went from there.
Thank you.
So often, a director will be excited and yell, cut. And that's last syllable has been spoken. And the editor really should have, a moment of the actor's expression or something. So it's amazing how often that kind of thing can save the scene.
Absolutely. And also on Dean's point, there was a peculiar light that we used, Dean used, called an HMI, and provided a lot of night light for us. And oddly enough, there was a strange little flicker that would appear intermittently, and it was just an anomaly, an electronic anomaly of some sort that was introduced. And at first we were also upset, especially Dean, I think. It's like, oh no, there's a kind of a modulation in the light. It was very slow. And at some point, we woke up and went, oh no, we meant that. That's intentional. That's for effect. And it looked cool, but a beautiful accident to Irwin's point, another thing that just went right for us.
But also,
One thing more to blow Dean Cundey's horn. I'm gonna blow your horn. Everybody seems to forget that, you don't forget that it was a very low budget picture. But what should be noted is that in addition to being a very limited budget, a great majority of the film was shot at night, which adds to the problem, which really makes it more difficult in your time setup. So you don't have the time to do things, to actually shoot, because you're spending all that time lighting, am I right, Dave? So just
to mention anamorphic lenses.
Anamorphic lenses, which I was surprised, quite frankly, when you guys told me you were going to use them. I didn't think we could fit it into the budget. I didn't know you did that. I expected we wouldn't have that. But I'm just tooting Dean's horn because night shooting is problematic in its own right. And how much would you say on a percentage basis was shot at night?
I would estimate too much.
That's why he has squinty eyes.
Yeah. So, no, one of the things that the movie required was nights, and especially exteriors. And with film or with digital, you can't see anything at night unless there's a lighting. And that meant we had to have lights on everything, all the way down the street for the trees to be able to see it. So I have to say we had a very diligent crew, electrical crew, guys who would really run fast in order to put up a light way down the street there. People who would go in and ask the old lady, is it okay if we put a light in your yard to light the tree, and that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of diligence, but clever use of the small amount of equipment that Irwin would let us have. That we ordered.
I should have listened to my wife. She wanted to mortgage my house and pay for the movie and own the whole thing.
oh my God. Tell them about no monitors. Come on, that's important. All these kids, they don't know. No monitors back then to see what you were filming.
When we were shooting with film, and now we've got digital, so you can see on a monitor exactly what you're shooting. But in those days, you had to take the word of the camera operator, and you had to stand and watch next to the camera to make sure you got it. So they were all kinds of, I wouldn't call them handicaps, but things that we had to sort of overcome.
I think it was 10 or 12 inches long. I don't know the brand name. God, man, we didn't keep track of stuff like that.
Those anamorphic lenses, I think I know where that may have started, although John probably would have used them anyway. But the very first meeting we had, I asked him to do one thing for me. I said, I'd like to get the audience's attention to the left side of the screen and say boo on the right. And he probably figured out that the way to do that was to have, only way you could do that was to have that wide screen.
Yeah, for those who don't know, anamorphic just means the process by which you get this big, wide screen aspect ratio for those who care is 2.35 to 1. But the movie goes on forever. If you're sitting in a movie theater, it's